Good evening. My name is Anthony Gann, and here I have my interpersonal communication project, which is the final project for Human Services 508 with Liberty University. And before we begin, I'd like to go over my table of contents, which is the introduction, the overarching goal, and what I want to take away from this course that we've taken. Also, enlarging the conversation. What steps can I take to enlarge the conversation to make our conversation more meaningful? In the background, behavior blend, and how my behavior blend influence and impact my communication. Potential barriers in interpersonal communication, and then noise pollution. And then how can we prevent the noise pollution? How can I prevent the noise pollution? Then ultimately come up with an action plan to help me become more of an effective communicator. So first I would like to go over my overarching goal, which is to overcome the urge to be an interrupter. In my home, I'm an interrupter, especially being in the military for 20 years and being that authority figure in my home. I realized that I can be an interrupter, especially when it comes to my young boys at home. And so when communicating and become more of a level 1 listener is what my overarching goal is, to actually take my time and listen to what they have to say, and also to validate them as well. This is not only for my children, but also for my wife. So my overarching goal is to become more of an effective communicator, especially in my home. So before we even begin, what is communication, you may ask? Well, communication is pretty much the continuous, complex, and collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making, according to Stewart. So when you are communicating with someone, the verbals is just as important as the nonverbals, and vice versa. The nonverbals, your body language, what you don't say, I found out could be just as impactful as what you say out of your mouth. And so here with the communication, we've learned about interpersonal communication. And then what interpersonal communication is, a subset of communication, a type or kind of contact that happens when people involve talk and listening in ways that maximize the presence in the personal. Being there in a moment, understanding and really listening to the person so you can provide feedback and get that critical information that you may be listening. And so now that we understand what communication is, let's go into how I can enlarge my conversation when I'm communicating with someone. So enlarging the conversation, according to me, is when both participants, the listener and the talker, are engaged in a dialogue and the two are being open, they're being honest, and being an empathetic listener, something that I really need to work on, listening with my heart, which in turn enhances the quality of conversation. And ultimately, it enhances the quality of a relationship. In fact, according to Stewart even says that there is a direct link between the quality of your communication and the quality of life. So that tells me if my life and the quality of my life is insufficient, then I may want to start looking at how I'm communicating with others. And personally here, enlarging the conversation would mean to be, again, an empathetic listener, having the ability to listen with my heart, and to ask those critical questions that will lead into depth, getting to know people, being there in a moment with them. In the conversation, according to Stewart again, the conversation is the relationship. So now not only is my quality of life dependent on how I communicate, now I'm understanding and I've also learned that my relationships is also dependent on conversation. So here's my personal background. I'm a 41-year-old African-American male. I was born and raised in the city of Philadelphia. I've been married for 17 years to the queen of my dreams, Erica Gant. We have 2 live-at-home children, Anthony Jr., who's 16, and then I have Jaden, who is 10 years old. I retired from the military in 2013 after 20 years of service with multiple deployments under my belt. So imagine how that can influence my communication. And currently, I'm pursuing my master's in human services with the cognate in military resilience. And here I have a family, love. It serves as a reminder, not only for the PowerPoint, but it serves as a reminder of why I need to communicate more effectively and how I'm influencing how my children communicate, hence being the tone setter in my home. So my behavioral blend, before we even get to behavior blend, is broken down in 4 categories, which are D, I, S, C. And the first portion is the D. And then a D is representative of one that has a personality trait of being dominant. One that's being demanding, direct, and determined. And these people are normally your outgoing people, and they're task-oriented. They are the ones that love getting the task done. Next, we have the I. And the I is representative of one who is inspiring, one who's influential, one that's interactive, and also one that's also impressive. These are your people-oriented people, and are also outgoing. Then we have our S personality. Our S personality is one that's supportive, someone that's steady, someone that's sensitive, and someone that's modest, and also could be someone that's shy. And these people are more of your introvert, your reserved people, and these people are also people-oriented. And then last but not least, we have our C. Our C-type personality are those personnel who are cautious, who analyze things, so therefore they're calculating, they're competent, and they're compliant. They're really not your rule breakers. They are going according to the law. And these are more of your reserved, your introverted people, and they're also task-oriented. So here you have it. You have your D, you have your I, you have your C, and you have your S. D as predominant, I for inspiring, your S is for supportive, and then your C is for those who are cautious. So now that you know what the DISC's personality traits are, let me share with you what mine are. So mine, according to Carbonell's behavioral blend, mine is IS. I fall in the IS category here. And so this is what's expected of a person, including myself, that falls into an IS category. 1, they tend to be more people-oriented than task-oriented. 2, they seem to enjoy talking to others as opposed to being by yourself. I will tell you, I am one that gets energized when I'm around people. People energize me. I don't get drained. So this is how I fall in to the IS category. And then some people wish that you would be more assertive and demanding, but also more cautious and analytical. Here, me, I realize that being an IS, the cautious and prudence is not one of my top strengths. And therefore, I have to have someone there to help balance me with that. And so this is what's expected of me, because sometimes I put more emphasis and priority on the relationship than I do to the task at hand. So that, again, is what's expected of me. Now, here's the other portion, according to my unique you, is behavior blend of this is me. This is who I am. So the only difference between what's expected of me, which is your IS, is we have added a D, which is one who's determined. So what I am, according to my behavioral blend, is DIS. And what that means is I'm positive and outgoing. I agree with that. But also have a need to loyally support others. I think a lot of that comes from the values that I have inherited in the military 20 years. Being loyal, never leaving a comrade on a battlefield. So that's definitely me. Another thing that's me is I've been told this, but I'm also inspiring to others, submitting to those who I trust. And I think that's another trait that fits well in the military. Hence probably why I had such a successful career, because it was almost in my DNA. It was a vocation to inherit those values that are expressed in our military today. And then last but not least, one of my problems or challenges, if you will, is the fact and figures are not as important to me as getting the job done. And so the details, again, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. It's the little details that get me out of the way And so that's another thing, as you can see later, one of my challenges and what I need to do to help me become more analytical and task focused versus people focused, because it's definitely shadow sides is what I like to call them, when I focus more on the people than the task, especially in the supervisor position. One can understand how that can become a challenge. So therefore, I have barriers. And with these potential barriers that I have, is barrier number one is perception. When I communicate, I allow my biases to influence how I process information. So according to what our relationship was, our past experiences, I allow that to impact and influence my decision, my gathering of information, and therefore may not hear the person that I'm communicating because I've already prejudged them in my head. So the solution to that is I will continue to overcome this barrier by remaining quiet when communicating, also by being a level 1 listener, which means being more empathetic, and again, to where I can gather that critical information so I can counteract these biases, so I can be more effective when I communicate, hence building relationships and connections. The barrier 2 that I have, as you can see, is interrupting. I often think about what I'm going to say when I'm communicating with someone, and it sometimes forces me not to listen intently or be in the moment with the individual whom I'm communicating with. So therefore, that's a barrier for me. And so the solution I have to that is to slow down. And another cue I have is when I'm communicating, I kind of have my ring, and I'll turn my ring as an indicator or a cue for me to slow down in a moment and really hear what the individual has to say to me. And so on top of slowing down, I'll ask those critical questions. And I also have to watch my nonverbals, my body language. What am I saying? We've heard the old cliche that actions speaks louder than words. So I definitely want to work on that area. And so when we go into noise pollution, that can be a hindrance to effective communication is the noise pollution piece. And there's 2 types of noise pollution. You have your internal and your external. Noise pollution internally is, what do you say to yourself, when you're in the moment? Hearing what you want to hear. Again, missing that critical information. Being a type 2 or 3 listener. Low energy levels. When you're talking about something that you want to do, you become energized when you're performing or doing something that you want to partake in. So that low energy level is something that I have to watch out for, which is that internal noise pollution. And then emotions. How am I feeling that day? What's my thought process? Understanding that my thoughts will always influence how I feel. So that's internal noise pollution. The external noise pollution is the television. I put television because I put that under the category of any type of media, whether it's social media, television, radio, things that can obstruct your listening, something that can be a stumbling block when you're communicating with someone, especially in a counseling forum. And then the temperature of the room, if I'm communicating, I need to make sure that the environment is set, make sure that everything is good so it can be an environment that's welcoming. And then loud conversations nearby. Again, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, loud is like our second last name. And so loud conversations, I know how to talk over, especially being in the military for 20 years. I can be loud, but the external with the loud conversations around, I have to be cognizant and mindful to get into a place to where these loud conversations does not impact my communication style. And so how do I prevent these pollutions when it comes to noise? Well, the first thing I want to do is ensure that the communication takes place in a noise-free environment, in an office with the door closed, when no one's around. No television, as I've said earlier, no radio, no social media, just being in a moment with that individual. Next, I want to set the room temperature prior to the communication. I want to make sure that the atmosphere is set before I communicate with the person whom I'm going to be communicating with. And then take proper precaution to ensure my energy levels are appropriate. And if I need to take caffeine, or if I need to go for a walk, if I need to do some deliberate breathing, then I'll do so to make sure that I'm effective at my communication style. And so with that being said, here are my action plans. My action plans to be more of an effective communicator is to understand that I have to keep an open mind not allowing my prejudices and my biases to influence or impact my thoughts process in whom I'm communicating with. I have to listen with my heart. Again, being in the moment. Be more of an empathetic listener. Being in the moment, not sympathetic, but empathetic. Being in the moment with the person, being there as if I was in their shoes. And then minimize the effect that perception has on my communication style. And then not to be the interrupter, especially when it comes to my loved ones. I have to stop being the interrupter. And so there you have it. That's me. That's my action plan for me to become more of an effective communicator. And here's my references that I've had. And I hope you all have a great day. God bless.